Okay, heads up. This is a crazy chapter and there's a lot to talk about, but I think this is one of the first times in these manga reviews where I'm going to only have to talk about like non-spoilery stuff for like a little bit. And then after that, I have to talk about webcomic stuff for the rest of this review because that's what this chapter is basically impacting, the overall story and where it is headed. But I'll give you a warning, of course, before I go into that. So first, let's just go over the surface of this chapter, and it's incredible, of course. This is cutting edge battle manga, no doubt. I mean, 10 out of 10 visuals and sequence and feat of power here in this chapter, but overall, it's like a 9. Pretty great. I mean, Marana and 1 have come back with a vengeance after the hiatus, and I knew that they were going to do this because that's kind of what they do, especially Marana. He aims to please, and he knew, coming off of that hiatus, he was going to have to come back with something incredible. And of course, he knocked it out of the park here. So I'm sure the thing that you're wondering the most about is this disaster level god? And in my honest opinion, it is. This is a true, clear-cut disaster level god feat if there ever was. This by far trumps what we've seen of Above Dragon so far. And if you're wondering where I personally think this ranks and like the most impressive feats in the series, I think it's got to be like number 3, right? I mean, maybe you assumed right off the bat that this was number 1, and it's understandable, but like if you compare this to the Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon and the Serious Punch, it seems to be right below that because the area of Earth that is being chopped off here by Orochi's laser beam, it seems to be like the size of a continent, I guess, and I'll go into that because very happy Marana decided to show us this incredible feat, clear-cut feat, but it seems to be smaller than the size of the Serious Punch, because that was like pretty much splitting like the entire Earth, and more or less the Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon was kind of doing the same thing, but also it's said that it would destroy at least the surface of the Earth. I'm not going to go into the cold beef about the translations and what means what. I don't care anymore. Think whatever you want, but also, I'm really glad that this feat has come because I've been waiting for a feat to like surpass Tatsumaki, pulling the Monster Association into the ground, but I did not expect it to come in the following chapter because this is basically taking the series to the next level. And I was going to make a video about this, well, I will soon, about where I see the power scale at the end of One Punch Man. And it's not what you think it's going to be. Like, this is just kind of like the midway bridge to what we're going to be seeing these characters power levels, if you will, and what they're capable of doing at the end of the series. Don't think so much planetary. Think outside the box for this one. Can't go into spoilers, of course. But anyway, going back to the Continental stuff, this is a clear-cut Continental level feat here, guys. And I'm sure we've all heard, or most of us have heard that term thrown around in power scaling videos or versus videos or whatever. And I would say that, I don't know, 7 or 8 times out of 10, the feat that they're claiming to be Continental probably ain't. But with this, there ain't no guessing, ain't no estimations, ain't no calculations on this one. This is as clear as it gets. And my final thoughts before I go into spoiler stuff is that I think Orochi is probably still above Dragon here. I don't think like her just existing right now is a disaster level god being, but that feat, that laser shaving the Earth, god level feat for sure. But I think we're going back to like a Boros Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon situation here, at least until further notice. But I'll go more into the spoiler stuff. Okay, I'm going to be heading into webcomic spoilers at this point, so if you don't want to know what's going to happen past what the manga is currently at, I suggest you check out now. So this is super interesting, and of course, if you've read the webcomic, you know that none of this happens. This is all new stuff. And I think Marana probably had some stuff to do with this as well, maybe influenced one in these decisions, and this is fine. I don't have any issues with this. This is further setting up the end game of the series here, just like the revisions for Chapter 99 and 100 were. But with this, it's like straight, clear, out in the open, like, hey, this is the end game here, guys, because this is straight up confirmation that Psychos has talked to God and received a power-up from him, right? If you'll go back to like a bunch of videos. I mean, actually, the video I made yesterday, I talked about God and what I think the origin here, what I thought the origin of him was, and I think this chapter just strengthens that. Basically, I came to the conclusion that God is like, I don't know, the sentience of the earth that monsterfied more or less, or something like that, and it's looking like that's probably true here. Regardless, even if that's not true, I also, in my prophecy video talking about Shibawa's prophecy, I talk about how that links up with the prophecy that Psycho sees or saw when she was in high school. She actually talks about that in this chapter as well. And of course, the manga onlys will be oblivious to this because it hasn't happened yet. But she says, like, on page 20, she devoted herself to those worthless hero activities, talking about Tatsumaki, and completely ignored my warnings. The warning talking about her when she was dipping into the third eye ability that Espers can do, essentially looking into the future like Madame Shibawa did in the beginning of the series. Psycho saw something that was like so crazy. It basically drove her to insanity. It drove her to what she is now. Like the Monster Association and all that stuff is because of what she saw in the vision. So that was the first time that I realized that, oh, this is all connected, and that Psychos was kind of just like the precursor to what the end game of the series is going to be. But now I think one of Marana kind of want to solidify that even more, rather than having it set up when, we see the flashback of her in high school with Fubuki. They're just going to set it up now and be like, okay, so God was already backing her from the beginning, because the way that I see it here, maybe I'm wrong. Please tell me if I am, but this power-up, the way that she was able to shoot the crazy optic blast that, shaved the earth, cut off its skull cap, that was given to her by God here. This was not just the Orochi battery power, because she literally says it herself that God straight up gave her the powers. Because when we get the flashback of her struggling with Orochi back in chapter 128, at that moment we do see like a glowing aura coming out of her eyes if you do go back to chapter 128. But now they're expanding upon this sequence, and apparently she had this whole internal monologue going on. Similar to what Homeless Emperor did, except Homeless Emperor seemed to get like the true version of God. Like that's like the most that I don't know, he's ever become like tangible with someone. The event that Psychos is recounting here is more like God spoke to her through feeling and invaded her consciousness and made her understand what he was doing without ever saying a word. And the way that he appears in front of her is like a planet, right? She says it's just like Jupiter, brain cells, the structural diagram of the universe, something like God, because this is literally God. The character, from chapter 113, the character we see take from Homeless Emperor. So I'm thinking that like this might be like what the Earth looks like underneath the surface, possibly. Like maybe it's like the core is there and stuff, but this is One Punch Man anime. We have to suspend our disbelief a little bit, but this might be literally like the earth. And I was trying to look like when she cut the earth part off, I was trying to see like if we could see the innards, but it's kind of ambiguous looking. Like Marana just drew it as like lines, so it could just be crust or whatever. I was trying to see if it looked like it was organic or whatever, because that would be like a dead giveaway that the earth has monsterfied it. It is in fact God. But another thing is that the aesthetic here, what Psycho says looks like Jupiter's surface, this is pretty much the aesthetic of God from the webcomic. Like his face looks just like that, and you could totally tell this is like Marana's impression of that, or at least that's what I'm getting here. I think this is totally what that is, which is pretty cool. But anyway, God gave her the power up here. Like when I guess he somehow saw Psycho struggling with Orochi, he chose Psychos as his champion and gave her this super power up that allowed her to fire off a disaster level God attack. So yeah, this is the power that God is capable of giving, which means that he's capable of doing it himself, I assume. And this is endgame level stuff, ladies and gentlemen, aside from like the fourth dimensional stuff that he's going to be doing, which I've talked about in the video that I made yesterday. There's more that I could say, but I need time to collect my thoughts, and I'll make a follow-up video to this, as it certainly deserves it. But let me know what you think about this in the comments. I'm sure there's a lot to talk about. But if you like the review, guys, please give it a like. I also have a Patreon to give you extra weekly Q&A, and if you haven't already, please subscribe as well. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.